Um, in many of these encounters, participants elevated their standard for harmony above simply not consuming animals at a network gathering at which animals were consumed. Raven sought to harmonize her veganism and her participation at a family gathering by preparing and bringing vegan food to the gathering. But for her, this harmony was contingent not only on her consumption of only vegan food at the gathering, but also on the willingness of her family members to eat the food that she prepared, willingness by which she measured their acceptance of her veganism. By this measure, they did not accept. I tried to make something, they didn't want it, and it hurt my feelings, Raven recalled. I was just like, you're not open to what I am doing. I promise you, it's good. Because of her family's refusal to eat her food, a refusal that she interpreted as rejection of her veganism, Raven planned to minimize her participation in future family gatherings, thereby asserting her difference as a vegan in relationship to non-vegans and prioritizing her veganism over her family membership in the context of the gatherings. As with Dan, Raven prioritized in hierarchical fashion only after her attempt to harmonize competing priorities was rejected by network members. However, while Dan sought to harmonize competing priorities by simply not consuming animals at the Thanksgiving dinner, Raven's pursuit of harmony was contingent on her family members eating vegan food that she had prepared for them. She could have harmonized her veganism and her family membership in this encounter had she prioritized according to Dan's standard for harmony. Her elevated standard was an assertion of difference, not only as a vegan in relationship to non-vegans, but also from Dan and other vegans who are willing to operate according to Dan's standard. Because Raven could not harmonize these competing priorities according to her elevated standard, she ultimately prioritized in hierarchical fashion. In some encounters, participants prioritized their network membership over their veganism, thereby violating their veganism. In the process, they asserted their sameness with non-vegans and their difference from fellow vegans. They also prioritized the preferences of network members over their preference to practice veganism. They also prioritized the preferences of network members over the preferences of the non-human animals who were murdered, consumed, and or subjected to human use in these encounters. So, what are the implications of this common pursuit of harmony between veganism and membership in networks in which veganism is not a norm for veganism as a movement seeking to challenge and change dominant dietary and consumption practices? Well, by harmonizing their veganism and their membership in networks in which veganism is not a norm, vegans preserve their relationships with non-vegans and maintain a presence for veganism in the lives of non-vegan network members. This sustained presence could be conducive to recruitment. Preserving relationships with non-vegans enables vegans to repeatedly model the ethics, the healthfulness, and the practicality of veganism in encounters with non-vegans, and to repeatedly expose non-vegans to delicious vegan food, which can mobilize non-vegans to contemplate the prospect of going vegan and to ultimately go vegan. However, by harmonizing their veganism and their network memberships, vegans also risk compromising veganism as a movement, again, seeking to challenge and change dominant dietary and consumption practices. My participants' pursuit of harmony is defined by their standard for harmony, a standard that can vary by encounter and by participant. In many encounters, participants harmonize their veganism and their network membership by restricting their standard for harmony to not consuming animals while tolerating their fellow network members' consumption of animals in their presence at network gatherings. This standard usually enables them to effectively preserve their veganism and their network membership in these encounters, but it means that they tolerate in their presence the consumption of animals, the very behavior to which veganism exists in opposition. Such tolerance could be perceived as acceptance of this behavior. Now, vegans seeking to harmonize competing priorities might frame their veganism as a personal preference. But most of my participants advocate veganism in some fashion. They harmonize not only to preserve their veganism in their network memberships, but also because they consider their pursuit of harmony to be conducive to effective vegan advocacy. They accommodate what Johnson calls anti-criticalness, in that they advocate without criticizing non-vegan network members for consuming animals. Johnson found that anti-criticalness is a strategy that some movements deploy as part of a broader strategy of meeting people where they are. My participants recognize that people in their networks have been socialized into the practice of consuming animals, so they attempt to meet these people where they are. This strategy of accommodating anti-criticalness might enhance the capacity of vegans to preserve their network memberships and recruit prospective vegans. But does this strategy ever evolve into criticalness? Does it ever evolve into legitimately challenging dominant dietary and consumption practices? Does it ever challenge the social arrangements that continually reconstruct veganism as a symbolic threat? For now, I am limited to speculation as I contemplate these implications, which merit additional inquiry. Thank you.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, it's working.
Awesome. Nice one.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name's Phil. This is Chris, and we're going to briefly talk about our plant-based university campaign. And I hope this is kind of inspiring for you, because a lot of this is inspired by your research, and I understand that a lot of work goes into it. So hopefully this will, bring some positivity as we're winding down this conference.
Amazing. So firstly, the background of the campaign. So we are a campaign, part of Animal Rising, formerly known as Animal Rebellion. And we have campaigns at over 70 universities across the country, in the UK, but also some internationally as well. So I believe we've got some in Austria, Australia, Netherlands, and a couple other places, and some starting up in the USA relatively recently. And yeah, we're asking for a just and sustainable transition to fully plant-based catering at universities. And the reason for this is because universities are centers of knowledge and research. And, you know, they publish this research, and we feel it's only makes sense for universities to act on this in their own catering policy. Universities are obviously influential. You know, they're pillars of community and policy. You know, they establish a lot of norms, especially for people coming and studying there. You know, they spend 3 years of their life there, and the experience they have there can really shape their, you know, their future with relation to animals and the environment. And it also sort of, you know, influences government policy as well. And by showing that plant-based catering is what we need, it really influences wider society. And that's not to mention, you know, the history of activism at universities, you know, across the world. And the fact that, you know, the average age of students is reasonably young. And, you know, therefore they are the ones that will be living in the future, you know, and they will be, you know, witnessing the full extent of climate change. And yeah, we use a climate narrative for this, which Bill will talk about more towards the end of the presentation. So the way this has worked at the University of Kent, we're proud to say that we've had 7 wins across the UK. So that's 7 universities that have committed to go fully plant-based by, you know, certain years. So I think University of Stirling is by the end of 2024-2025 academic year. So, you know, it's pretty soon. It's pretty soon. So yeah, the way it worked at our university. So for context, our uni has been described as having a culture of inaction, and you know, students come along, they feel very disenfranchised with the way they're not listened to, and then that just sort of feeds back into this, you know, future sort of lack of action, because, you know, people think, oh, that's not how we do it here at Kent. So we wanted to challenge that, and we did. So we started off, me and another student, we just went and collected emails. We went to the Freshers' Fair, which is, the first sort of all the new students come along. And we spoke to them and we said, well, do you care about the climate crisis? Does this worry you? And most people go, yes, of course it does. And then we say, well, did you know that animal agriculture is one of the leading causes of the climate crisis? And they go, no, I didn't know that. So we then go, well, this is what we're trying to do. We're going to put a motion forward, and it's going to make the university fully plant-based catering, for all of these reasons. And then they're left with the choice of, do I want to, be seen to be someone who, doesn't care about the climate crisis? Or do I want to, does this worry me, and do I want to act on it? And it polarizes people, and really sort of garners that support in favor, because they go, well, yeah, of course, I want to help. I want to help stop the climate crisis. What can I do to support this? So we hosted a university panel with Corey, some activists, some medical doctors, to show why we needed this and to really sort of advocate for this. And we then put forward a policy motion to our student union, and it got the highest votes in the history of our university. It was really effective, because we only asked, it was just people simply had to vote. It wasn't like they had to go ridiculously out of their way. They just voted, and it was a really great way to sort of utilize the climate narrative and support for this. So it went to the Student Union Board of Trustees, which is an unelected body, I might add. But they had concerns, and then we came back to them, responded with medical evidence, medical literature, stuff about inclusivity, medical accessibility, financial, and sort of cultural sensitivity. And we said to them, well, if you want this food to be a third cheaper, if you want it to be healthier, if you want it to be sort of more accessible, and if you want to decolonize, the university and the food system, this is the way forward. And, we hosted a rally, and eventually, after sort of this mix of direct action, which has its roots with, as we said, we're a part of Animal Rising. We had this, this combination of the evidence and the student support really sort of encouraged the student union to push our motion forward and to pass it. And here we are today, which, so we're very proud of that, and it's really exciting. So, so Bill will talk a bit about the challenges and the successes that we faced. Over to you, Bill.
So the nature of our campaign does come with some limitations. Firstly is the kind of invisibility of non-human animals around the kind of climate dialogue. This is something that we need to be kind of aware of. But also, if you think about the institution sociologically, we understand that institutions have their own logics and way of thinking. So we're trying to think about what would be the most effective way to convince a board of trustees. And the climate crisis and being environmentally friendly has almost become part of their brand. It's involved in this logic. So in a lot of ways, they've enabled themselves to be held accountable. Like they can't just say that they care about the climate crisis. And actually, the Kent Union had a quote on the website saying that we understand the cost of inaction and the importance of action. And this is something we cited often to get them to act. So why we need to be wary and critical of the fact that non-human animals are invisible in the campaign, that this has huge implications for them. And Chris and I have also engaged in other forms of campaigning. We've done supermarket sit-ins and stuff like that, which puts forward non-human animals first. So this is one of many types of action that we've been involved in. Another challenge that we faced was a lack of resources and academic and peer support. Now, these things can come together, and they created quite a strong barrier to our campaign. The library and the School of Anthropology, for example, didn't let us hang posters up in their buildings, and it obviously costs money and resources and time to print these. The Division of Social Justice was initially hesitant to have us speak on a panel until they were reminded of their commitment to student engagement. And the 2023 Animal Rights Conference was very expensive for us to attend. It was around £250, £300 for us to attend, and this stopped us from coming in a meaningful way, despite the conference covering such issues as the problems activists are facing today. So really, we do need academic support as well from this because it's your research and an institution that says that they care about the climate crisis. And when these things are inconsistent, we can go look at this inconsistency and you need to act on it. And of course, with all of this, it took around a year and we had to avoid burnout while compromising and negotiating with the university. So these are some of the challenges, or the biggest challenges that we face. Okay, but there's a lot of room for hope too. The campaign resulted in the student union agreeing to lobby the university to become plant-based by 2027, 2028. And when we think about the kind of time span that we had, this is quite a significant change from like a year ago. Sorry. And this has also come from Stirling, Cambridge, Queen Mary, London, Birmingham, London Metropolitan. All of these have similar votes, which means all these students have been inspired by a vegan scholarship, and it's starting a dialogue within universities, and also a much wider dialogue. We're appearing much more in the media, and these conversations are going. So what's started as a few national campaigns and international campaigns are all kind of coming together, and we're seeing kind of a wider societal dialogue from student action. And this leads us to our next slide, which is recently, this says 650 academics. It's now above 800. 800 academics have called for 100% plant-based universities. And this has kind of come after the success of our campaign and the kind of it's drawing more attention. But yeah, this is also why we need your help. This is why we need you to sign our open letter, which I'll put in the chat shortly. But we want to hold institutions accountable and create a university that is aligned with your research. But we need your support to do this. You have the ability to raise student voices and get them involved in student decision making. And me personally, I've come from a background of youth work. So it was very surprising the kind of difference between university and youth work. And I really think universities can be a space where we can encourage students to get involved in not just theory, but practice as well. And we can also talk about, obviously, the merits and demerits of our campaign, but the issue already is at the university. Like, sociological issues are being obscured by the universities. This theorist notes that talking about change is no longer enough. Universities are sending a
I think Bill's Wi-Fi might have gone. Yeah, I'm going to guess it has. So I will finish reading that quote. Universities are sending a message to students, staff, and wider society that the issues associated with animal-based foods are not important enough to warrant changes. And this is, oh, Bill, you're back. No? I can't hear you speaking. Apologies for this. No? Okay. So basically,
message to student, staff, and wider society.
Bill?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Oh my God, finally. Right, cool.
Okay.
Do you want to finish talking about this quote and explaining its relevance to
Yes.
universities?
Okay. So I don't know where this cut off, but so sociological issues are being obscured by the university. This release notes that universities are sending a clear message to students, staff, and wider society that the issues associated with animal-based foods are not important enough to warrant changes. So when we look at the institution, this is a place where socialization occurs. These are institutions with their own logics and functions, and people are leaving the universities with these kind of beliefs. So we can look at the universities as something that is already oriented towards injustice, towards non-human animals, and all the consequences that also has on people. So when we talk about the merits and demerits of our campaign, we should also think about the fact that the university is something already oriented towards injustice, towards non-human animals, and which is why we need to kind of end this complicity in this issue related to the climate and also the lives of non-human animals.
That was worth the wait, I have to say. That was yes. So yeah, as Bill said, it's really necessary, and we need this support. I mean, it's one of the sort of most effective campaigns we've seen with Changing University, sort of, again, compliance with animal agriculture, you know, in a very long time. Like, you know, in a year, you know, this campaign started about 2 years ago, and it's only sort of ramped up to these other universities in sort of the last year. And we've had 7 universities within a year make this change. And it's incredible. It's incredible. You know, it's the momentum and the effectiveness of this, these tactics, this rhetoric, and sort of getting this student support. You know, students do really care about this issue. You know, it's clearly effective. And this obviously has a positive impact on, you know, interactions with non-human animals in wider society, as Bill said. So how to get involved? Firstly, reach out to your university's plant-based universities campaign on your campus to offer your support. Chances are, you know, you might very well have one, and I'm sure they've made themselves very visible. If you do have one, just reach out. I think academics and lecturers can really be so supportive and incredibly, you know, useful, because you have access to knowledge of what's happening inside schools. You can set up meetings with other academics and heads of school, invite us to conferences, advocate for us, you know, in all these sort of settings, when otherwise we would get dismissed as students. And, you know, you have respect on campus, and that can really be seen with the passing of our motion at the University of Kent. We have, you know, with the support of Corey and other academics, we were really able to persuade the Students' Union of the relevance and importance of this. And yeah, and if there isn't a campaign, as said, you know, Bill has popped the details of a Google document with all the contacts into the chat, and definitely check that out. There's videos, there's websites, and there's also contact details on the website where you can, you know, reach out and ask people to, you know, ask for information about how to set up a campaign. And I'd really encourage you to invite your students to set up a campaign. Just sort of direct them to the website. And there's training, and there's we've got, you know, 2 years of history of this campaign working well now. So yeah, they'll be provided with everything they need, and they might just sort of need that push to go towards that website. And finally, sign the open letter. It takes about a minute of your time, and it's very easy. Just your details. Just email it to the information on the document that we popped down there. And, you know, collectively, this has such a strong power, such a big influence, because there's respected people, knowledgeable in their fields, you know, showing the way to sort of the future of plant-based catering. So yeah, I'd really encourage you to do all those things, and thank you very much for your support.